My Pokemon didn't produce any berries or ingredients or output a skill for several hours. In this video, I'm going to tell you guys what happened and how to avoid having this problem happen to you. Welcome back to another Pokemon Sleep video. It's Bro Vinny here. So the problem is to do with when the game decides that the changes you've made to your team, your active team, are to be applied. And I'll give you the answer first, but for the remainder of this video, I'll prove to you that that's the case. So as it turns out, the act of switching a Pokemon, let's say I go from Gengar here to Jigglypuff, the act of switching the Pokemon doesn't actually do anything to the game. In fact, this new team only applies, and this Jigglypuff only starts farming when you go and press the back button or exit the edit team page, which, if you ask me, is very unintuitive. And that created a problem for me this morning when I was farming. So initially I was running this team here, but in the morning I wanted to change out the Golem for Wigglytuff, which is what I did. But what I didn't do was I didn't press the back button. I didn't exit this page. I stayed on this page for several hours as I went about doing my other stuff during the day. And when I came back, to my surprise, every Pokemon produced good berries and ingredients as they normally did, except Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff did not do anything at all. I even restarted the app just to double check, and the Wigglytuff had produced 0 berries and 0 ingredients and had no skill trigger. And apparently, I wasn't the only one that's noticed this. So Raichi, Dan, Hero Bunny, all joined into this conversation. Then it became apparent to me that the act of exiting the team's page by pressing the back button is what saves the team. So what happened to the berries and ingredients that would have been stored on the Golem that was farming in the background unbeknownst to me? In other words, while I had this screen up on my phone, Golem was actually the one farming. But when I came back several hours later and pressed the back button, did Golem's berries just get automatically fed to Snorlax? What about the ingredients, or are they all lost? So I set out to do 3 tests to test my hypothesis. The first 2 of these tests you can do yourself because it won't harm your productions. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you that these Pokemon all have some productions in them. So some sort of berries or ingredients. And then I'm going to switch out this Gengar for something else. Now typically when you switch out a Pokemon, the new Pokemon would have no productions at all. But because the game doesn't consider this as the new team yet until I back out of it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the game as it is right now, and you'll see that Wigglytuff was not part of the team at all. So I'm going to log into my game. So I just closed it. I'm going to log back in. And you'll see that my Wigglytuff never joined the team. It was always still Gengar and still with the same production, as you saw before I attempted to change the team. Now the second test is what happens if I change to Wigglytuff and then I change back to Gengar. Will that remove all the productions from Gengar? And the answer is, it doesn't, because the team never changed according to the game. You didn't have a moment where Jiggly or Wigglytuff was in the team, so the productions are still all there. And from these 2 tests that you can even test yourself, you'll see that it's the act of exiting the edit team's page, not the act of changing the Pokemon, that determines your team. So the final question is, well, what happens to these productions of Gengar if I did change to Wigglytuff? Now for this test, I'm actually going to go to my alt account because I don't actually want to waste the production on my Pokemon in my main account. And what I'm going to do here is I've actually got a full inventory for Squirtle. And you'll see that it's got a lot of orange berries and milk. And while the inventory is full, I'm going to swap out this Squirtle and see if there's any change in the Snorlax strength. So if you remember this number, 54,723, and now watch me change out this Squirtle into a Caterpie. And now going back to the map, so you'll see that all of my Pokemon have all their production still except for Caterpie. And my Snorlax did not increase its strength, nor did I get any sneaky snacking. So basically, everything that my Squirtle had earned in its full inventory are gone. They're just deleted from existence. And now you can see why I didn't want to test this with my main account, because everything is just lost. So if you don't want this to ever happen to you, the main thing you gotta know is not to stay on this page after having changed your team. Or if you accidentally did do what I did and had left the edit screen on idle for hours, then what you want to do is change back to the Pokemon that was there originally. So I should have, when I originally changed from Golem to Wigglytuff, several hours later come back to the game, I should have changed back to Golem before pressing that back button. Or simply close the game, because the game still thinks I'm running Golem. In that way, I can then go to collect my Golem productions before going back to change to Wigglytuff again. So the good news is, no matter how much you play around on this page, nothing actually matters until you exit, you press that back button. So if you hypothetically change back to the exact same team, nothing would be lost at all. Now, for those of you who are curious, you might be asking, well, what if I simply change the position of my teams? So what if I change Gengar and Marowak and maybe Feraligatr with Dugtrio and then change again with Charizard? What if I simply swap the position of my team members on the team, but not actually changing the team? Will that affect production? And the answer is, it won't. So the position of your team members will not affect the inventory productions of the Pokemon. I'm going to prove this to you with my ult once again. So here you can see my ult with a fair bit of production. Squirtle was more recently put in, so it's got less production, but it's all there. And I'm going to swap the Pokemon around. And this is the new team's positions. And you'll see that they still got their berries and ingredients in their inventory. And here you are. All of the berries are still there. So now you know how this works. Don't make the same mistake I did by lingering on this edit teams page for too long after having made modifications. And that's all I have to say for today. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel.